If you've ever rebuilt your life from ashes, you know the exact moment the match strikes again. Subscribe. You'll want to see what comes next. I heard Len's before I saw him. Mama, why does that man have our eyes? And I turned from the kiosk register with a smile that died before it ever reached my face when I saw Bruce Downey standing motionless beneath the skylight, staring at my quadruplets like they were evidence in a trial he'd already lost. Before his gaze cut to me with the force of a sentencing, the coffee tray I was holding slipped in my grip. I caught it, but foam sloshed over the rim and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. For years of moving like a shadow through this bright glass mall. For years of ordinary shifts, warm sweaters, and short answers. For years of building safety inside routine. And Bruce Downey had just shattered the skylight. He's probably just tired, baby, I managed, my voice thin and brittle as I set the tray down before I dropped it. Don't stare. But Len's wasn't staring. Bruce was. He couldn't seem to look away from Lens's face, the sharp line of his jaw, the set of his shoulders, the tiny scar above his left eyebrow that mirrored a mark Bruce had carried since childhood. Then his gaze shifted. Bush, standing quiet and watchful near the stroller. McDonald, gripping the hem of my sweater with stubborn fists. Alex, leaning into my hip, silent and still as stone. For faces. For versions of a truth I'd spent years burying. Two men in dark suits had followed Bruce into the atrium. They flanked him now, scanning the crowd with the practiced efficiency of guards who didn't need to announce themselves, but even they had gone still when they noticed the children. One of them leaned close to Bruce, murmured something low. Bruce didn't respond. He didn't even blink. Len, sweetheart, I said, my voice sharper than I meant it to be. Take your brothers over to the bench by the fountain, okay? Mama needs a minute. But Mama, the tall man is. Now. Something in my tone made his mouth snap shut. Bush took his hand without a word. McDonald hesitated, searching my face with eyes too old for a 4-year-old, before Alex tugged him gently away. I watched them go, using those precious seconds to force air into my lungs and brace my spine against the weight of what was coming. When I turned back, Bruce had moved closer. Close enough that I could see the tension in his jaw. Close enough that the faint scent of his cologne hit me like a blow I hadn't prepared for, dragging up memories of locked doors, whispered warnings, and the envelope that had rewritten my entire life. Edna. My name came out quiet. Controlled. Deadly. The atrium wasn't empty. Midday shoppers drifted past with bags and phones. A woman pushed a stroller near the fountain. Elevator music drifted down from overhead speakers. The world kept moving like nothing had changed. But everything had. I don't know you, I said. It was a stupid lie. We both knew it. Bruce's gaze flicked toward the children, then back to me. 4 of them. Not a question. A reckoning. I don't know what you think you see. Don't. The word cracked through the air like glass breaking. Don't insult me by pretending, he continued, his voice dropping lower, softer, more dangerous. Not about this. Lenz chose that moment to wave at us from the fountain bench, wide grin on his face like this was all some fun game. Bruce's expression flickered, something raw and unguarded slipping through the cracks before he locked it down again. Mama? McDonald's voice carried across the tiles, thin with worry. He'd always been able to feel tension like weather. Are we leaving? Yes, baby, I called back. We're leaving right now. No. Bruce shifted half a step to the side, not touching me, not blocking me, but making it very clear I wasn't going anywhere. You're not. You don't get to tell me. They have my face, Edna. His voice cracked just enough for me to hear it. Just enough for doubt to crawl beneath my ribs. They have my scar. My eyes. He stopped, jaw working, and for a moment I thought he might actually lose control. But Bruce Downey didn't lose control. He was control. When he spoke again, it was with the kind of calm that made my skin crawl. We're going to talk. Tonight. After your shift ends. I'm not doing this, I whispered. Not here. Not with them watching. Then tell me where it's safe. Nowhere is safe with you in it. The words came out harsher than I'd meant, but they landed exactly where I'd aimed them. Bruce flinched barely, just a tightening around his eyes, but I saw it. One of his guards stepped forward, murmured something urgent. Bruce waved him off without looking. Edna. My name again, quieter this time. Almost, careful. I'm not walking away from this. A woman near the escalators had stopped pretending to check her phone. She was staring now, and I could see the exact moment she recognized Bruce, her eyes going wide, her hand tightening on her purse strap as she backed away. We were making a scene. 7:30, I heard myself say. There's a service hall near the north loading dock. Meet me there. Alone. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe. He'd expected more of a fight. 7:30, he agreed. Then, just before he turned to leave, his gaze found the children one more time. What are their names? I could have refused. Should have. But my mouth betrayed me. Lenz. Bush. McDonald. Alex. He repeated them, slow and deliberate, like he was carving the syllables into stone. Lenz. Bush. McDonald. Alex. Then he was gone, his guards falling into step behind him, and the atrium felt too bright and too loud and too exposed all at once. I stood there for a long moment, gripping the kiosk counter, trying to remember how to think. Mama? Lenz was suddenly beside me, tugging on my sleeve, his face scrunched with confusion. Why did that man look so sad? I crouched down, pulling him close, then reaching for the others as they crowded in Bush's serious eyes, McDonald's tight grip, Alex's quiet presence at my back. I buried my face in Lenz's curls and tried not to fall apart. Just someone Mama used to know, I whispered. A long time ago. Is he coming back? God, yes. He was coming back. And when he did, every carefully built lie I'd wrapped around us was going to burn. Maybe, I said. But it's okay. Mama's got everything under control. It was the biggest lie I'd told in 4 years. The rest of the shift passed in a mechanical blur. I smiled when I was supposed to smile. I counted change. I restocked napkins. I wiped down surfaces that didn't need wiping. But my mind wasn't in the kiosk. It was in the atrium, watching Bruce's face when he'd looked at the quadruplets. The shock. The recognition. The something else I couldn't name, something that had looked almost like grief. I kept replaying the way his voice had cracked on, they have my face. Like he'd been searching for something lost. Like maybe he didn't know the whole story either. By 6:45, I'd called my neighbor, Mrs. Diane, a kind woman who sometimes watched the quadruplets when my shifts ran long. She asked no questions when she heard the shake in my voice, just promised to keep them safe and fed. By 7, the mall crowds had thinned to stragglers and closing time workers. By 7:15, I'd locked up the kiosk, changed out of my apron, and made my way toward the service corridor with my heartbeat hammering in my ears. At 7:28, I stood beneath a flickering service light near the loading dock, alone in a hallway that smelled like cleaning chemicals and old concrete. At 7:30 exactly, I heard footsteps. Bruce Downey stepped into the light. He wasn't alone. Bruce Downey stepped into the light. He wasn't alone. A second man followed half a step behind, older, maybe mid-50s, with silver threading through dark hair and a face that looked like it had been built for listening. Expensive suit. Calm hands. The kind of man who carried authority without needing to announce it. My stomach dropped. You said alone, I managed, my voice steadier than I felt. This is Graham Voss, Bruce said, his tone flat, matter of fact. My senior advisor. If we're going to talk, he needs to hear it. Graham offered a polite smile that didn't reach his eyes. Miss Kernet. It's good to finally meet you. Finally. The word sat wrong in my chest, but I didn't have time to dissect it. Bruce was already moving deeper into the corridor, his footsteps echoing off concrete, and Graham followed with the quiet efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times before. I stayed where I was, back pressed against the cold metal of the service door. Edna. Bruce stopped, turned. We don't have all night. Then maybe you should have come alone like I asked. Maybe you should have told me I had 4 children before you disappeared. The accusation landed like a fist to the ribs. I forced myself to breathe through it. I'm here, I said quietly. What do you want? The truth. 3 hours earlier, I'd stood in Mrs. Diane's doorway with my heart trying to climb out of my throat. You sure you're all right, honey? She'd asked, her kind eyes scanning my face with the sort of maternal worry I'd stopped expecting from anyone. I'd nodded, too quickly. Just a work thing. Inventory. Might run late. Lens had tugged on my sleeve. Mama, are we sleeping here? Just for a little while, baby. I'd crouched down, pulling all 4 of them close, breathing in the scent of their shampoo and trying not to fall apart. You be good for Miss Diane, okay? Mama will be back soon. Bush had studied me with those sharp, knowing eyes, Bruce's eyes, and asked, is it because of the sad man? My smile had felt like broken glass. No, sweetheart. Mama just has work to finish. MacDonald hadn't let go of my hand. Alex had stayed quiet, watching. I'd kissed each of their foreheads, memorizing the weight of them in my arms, and forced myself to walk away before the fear on my face could bleed through the cracks. On my way to the service corridor, I'd started noticing things. A janitor I'd never seen before, mopping the same stretch of tile twice. A security guard lingering near the escalators, his attention tracking me instead of the closing time stragglers. A woman in a mall uniform restocking a display that didn't need restocking, her gaze flicking toward me every few seconds like she was counting my steps. The mall wasn't neutral anymore. If it ever had been. Now, standing in the fluorescent hum of the service hall with Bruce and Graham Voss watching me like I was a puzzle they were trying to solve, I realized just how deep the trap had been set. The truth, I repeated, tasting the bitterness of the word. You want the truth? Fine. I ran because I thought you were going to kill me. Bruce's jaw tightened. I never. I had proof. I cut him off, my voice rising despite myself. An envelope. Official letterhead. Your signature. A deadline. I was carrying your children, Bruce, and someone told me I had 48 hours to disappear or I wouldn't survive the week. Graham shifted slightly, his expression neutral, but I caught the way his gaze sharpened. Bruce didn't move. Didn't blink. I never gave that order, he said, his voice dangerously quiet. Then someone did it for you. Silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. Graham cleared his throat gently. Miss Kernet, I understand this must have been traumatic for you. But you have to understand Bruce's position. When you disappeared, certain financial discrepancies came to light. Documents were missing. Accounts had been accessed. From where Bruce stood. I didn't steal anything, I snapped, turning on him. I didn't betray anyone. I ran because I thought I was going to die. Graham's smile was patient, practiced. Of course. But perception and reality don't always align, do they? Bruce was given information. You were given information. Both of you acted on what you believed to be true. He made it sound so reasonable. So clean. I hated him for it. Bruce stepped closer, his focus locked entirely on me. You should have come to me. I couldn't. My voice cracked, and I hated that too. I was 23 years old, pregnant with quadruplets, and terrified. I did what I had to do to keep them safe. From me. From your world. The distinction hung in the air between us. Bruce exhaled slowly, dragging a hand through his hair, and for a moment he looked less like a mafia boss and more like a man who'd just realized he'd lost 4 years he couldn't get back. I'm not walking away from them, he said finally. You need to understand that. They're my blood. I don't care what happened 4 years ago. I don't care what you thought or what I thought. They exist. And I will be part of their lives. You don't get to just. I'm not asking, Edna. The words cut clean through my protest. They're not bargaining chips, I said, forcing steel into my voice. They're not leverage. They're children. And I won't hand them over to a man who might still believe I'm a thief and a traitor. Bruce's eyes narrowed. Then what do you want? Proof. I met his gaze head-on, refusing to flinch. Proof you didn't order my death. Proof I'm not putting them in danger by letting you close. You want access to your children? Fine. But I need to know they'll be safe. Graham stepped forward smoothly, his tone diplomatic. Miss Kernett, I think we can arrange that. Bruce has resources. We can look into the original threat, trace the source. I still have the envelope, I interrupted. Both men went still. You what? Bruce's voice dropped to something just above a whisper. I kept it. I kept everything. Hospital records. Timelines. The envelope with your signature. I'm not stupid, Bruce. I knew one day I might need proof of my own. Graham's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes, a calculation maybe. Or recognition. Where is it? Bruce demanded. Safe. And it stays that way until I know I can trust you. You don't have a choice. Yes, I do. I stepped forward, closing the distance, and for the first time since he'd walked into my mall, I saw Bruce Downey actually hesitate. You might be able to take them. You have money, power, lawyers, I know how this works. But you walk into family court claiming 4 children you never knew existed while their mother has documented proof she fled for her life? That's not a clean win, Bruce. That's a war. And wars get ugly. They get public. His nostrils flared, but he didn't argue. Graham cleared his throat again. I think what Bruce is trying to say is that no one wants this to become adversarial. We're all interested in the children's well-being. Perhaps we can approach this more collaboratively. There was something about the way he said it. Something smooth and pre-packaged, like he'd delivered this exact line before. Bruce must have heard it too, because he shot Graham a look I couldn't quite read. What I'm proposing, Graham continued, unruffled, is a controlled investigation into the original threat. We verify the authenticity of the documents you have. Bruce gets clarity. You get peace of mind. And in the meantime, we establish a visitation framework that protects everyone involved. A visitation framework, I repeated slowly. Supervised, if you prefer. Neutral locations. Gradual integration. The children's stability is paramount. The children's stability is paramount. The phrase hit me like cold water. I'd heard those exact words before. For years ago. In the envelope. Tucked between the threat and the deadline, like someone was doing me a favor by giving me a chance to run. For the children's stability, it is paramount that you remove yourself from Mr. Downey's sphere of influence immediately. My blood went cold. Graham was still talking, his tone calm and professional, but I'd stopped listening. I was too busy watching the way his hands moved controlled, deliberate. The way his face stayed neutral even when his words carried weight. He'd written the letter. Or he knew who had. Bruce was watching me now, his brow furrowed. Edna. I forced myself to focus, to keep my face blank, to not let the panic show. I'll think about it, I said, my voice distant even to my own ears. That's not. I need time. You ambushed me in a mall, Bruce. You can give me 24 hours to process. Graham smiled again, that same polite, practiced smile. Of course. We understand this is overwhelming. Take the time you need. But Bruce wasn't smiling. He was staring at me like he could see straight through to the fear crawling up my spine. 24 hours, he said finally. Then we talk again. And Edna, he stepped closer, close enough that I could see the exhaustion around his eyes. I meant what I said. I'm not walking away. Then he was gone, Graham Voss trailing after him like a shadow in an expensive suit. I stood alone in the service corridor, my heart hammering, my hands shaking, and one phrase looping endlessly through my mind. The children's stability is paramount. The lie wasn't dead. It had been sitting beside Bruce for 4 years, wearing a polite smile and a tailored suit. And now it knew exactly where to find me. I made it 3 blocks from the mall before my legs gave out. Not physically. I kept walking, kept putting one foot in front of the other like a functional human being. But inside, everything had collapsed. The children's stability is paramount. Graham Voss had smiled when he'd said it. Calm. Professional. Like he was discussing a business merger instead of the sentence that had destroyed my life 4 years ago. I walked faster, my breath coming short and sharp, the night air biting at my face. I needed to get home. I needed to think. I needed to remember. For years and 3 months ago, I'd been 23 years old and convinced I'd found something real. Bruce Downey wasn't supposed to be kind. Men in his position, men who controlled entire networks with a handshake and a quiet word, weren't supposed to laugh at bad jokes or remember how you took your coffee or look at you like you were the only person in the room worth seeing. But he had. I'd started as a records clerk in one of his legitimate businesses. Clean work. Boring work. The kind of job that paid rent and didn't ask questions. I'd been good at being invisible, at keeping my head down and my mouth shut. Bruce had noticed me anyway. "You're careful," he'd said one night late, when I'd stayed behind to finish filing a backlog of contracts. He'd appeared in the doorway of the records room like a shadow taking shape, and I'd nearly jumped out of my skin. I like things organized," I'd stammered. "No." He'd stepped closer, his gaze sharp and assessing. "You're careful because you're smart. You see patterns. You notice when things don't add up." I hadn't known what to say to that. "I could use someone smart," he continued. "Someone I can trust to see the details I miss." That was how it started. Late nights reviewing contracts. Quiet dinners that blurred into strategy sessions. Conversations that peeled back layers until I realized I wasn't just working for Bruce Downey, I was inside his world. And then one night, in his office with the city lights stretching out below us, he looked at me and said, "You know what I am. What I do." It wasn't a question. "Yes," I'd whispered. "And you're still here." "Yes." He'd reached for my hand, his thumb brushing over my knuckles with a gentleness that didn't match the reputation. "Then you should know I don't let people in easily. But when I do, I protect them. Always." I'd believed him. God help me, I'd believed him. 3 months later, I'd missed my period. 2 weeks after that, the ultrasound technician had gone very, very quiet before turning the screen toward me. "Ms. Kernet, you're carrying multiples." "Twins," I'd whispered. "Quadruplets." The room had tilted. I'd told Bruce that night, terrified and hopeful and completely unprepared for the way his face had lit up, like I'd just handed him something more valuable than any empire. "For," he'd said, his voice rough with something that sounded like wonder. "You're sure?" The doctor was very sure. He'd pulled me close, his hand sliding to rest against my still flat stomach, and for a moment I'd felt safe. Protected. Like maybe we could actually build something good out of the chaos. I'd been so stupid. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning. I'd been 12 weeks along, just starting to show, and Bruce had been out of the city on business. I'd stayed at his penthouse, our penthouse, he'd started calling it, and I'd been making coffee when someone slid the envelope under the door. Thick. Cream-colored. Official seal embossed in the corner. My hands had shaken as I'd opened it. "Ms. Kernet, recent financial audits have revealed significant discrepancies tied to your access codes. Additionally, surveillance has captured concerning communications between you and parties hostile to Mr. Downey's interests. For the children's stability, it is paramount that you remove yourself from Mr. Downey's sphere of influence immediately. Failure to comply within 48 hours will result in necessary corrective measures. This is not a negotiation. B. Downey." The signature at the bottom had looked exactly like Bruce's. I'd read it 3 times, my vision blurring, my breath coming in short gasps that didn't seem to pull in any air. Discrepancies. Hostile parties. Corrective measures. I'd grabbed my phone, started to dial Bruce's number. The door had opened. I'd spun around, the envelope clutched in my shaking hands, and found myself face to face with a woman I'd only seen twice before, Marla Downey. Bruce's aunt. Silver-haired, sharp-eyed, the kind of woman who ran board meetings like military operations. "Ms. Kernet." Her voice had been calm, almost kind. "I see you received the notice. This is a mistake I'd managed. I didn't. I would never. I know this is difficult." She'd stepped inside, closing the door behind her with a soft click that had sounded like a prison lock. "But you must understand, Bruce's position is delicate. Enemies are always watching, always looking for leverage. I'm not leverage. I'm carrying his children, which makes you the perfect target." Marla had moved closer, her gaze dropping to my stomach with something that looked almost like pity. "If Bruce's rivals discover your existence, they won't hesitate to use you. To use them. The kindest thing you can do, for yourself and for those babies, is to disappear." "Bruce wouldn't." "Bruce ordered this," Marla had said gently, gesturing to the envelope. "He's protecting you the only way he knows how. By removing you from the line of fire. Then let me talk to him. He doesn't want to see you." The words had landed like a blade between my ribs. "If he did," Marla had continued, "he would be here. Instead, he sent me. He sent this." Another gesture toward the envelope. "He's giving you a chance to walk away with your life, Miss Kernet. I suggest you take it." She'd left a prepaid phone and an envelope of cash on the counter. "You have 48 hours, she'd said. Use them wisely." Then she'd been gone. I'd run before dawn. One bag. Cash. New name purchased from a contact who didn't ask questions. I'd cut my hair in a gas station bathroom. Burned my old ID in a trash fire behind a rest stop. I'd moved like a ghost through 3 cities before finally settling in a place bright and public enough that I thought I could hide in plain sight. I'd told myself I was protecting my children. I'd told myself Bruce had chosen his empire over us. I'd told myself the fear would fade. I'd been wrong about all of it. Present day. My apartment. 11:47 p.m. I stood in front of the loose floorboard beneath my closet, my hands steadier than they'd been in hours. The packet was exactly where I'd left it. Sealed in plastic. Wrapped in an old t-shirt. Hidden beneath 4 years of dust and silence. I pulled it out and spread the contents across my bed. Hospital records. Ultrasound photos showing 4 tiny shapes. My name. The date. A photograph of the envelope. I'd been too afraid to keep the original, but I documented everything before I'd burned it. And a phone. Old. Cheap. The kind you bought at convenience stores and threw away after one use. I'd found it in the penthouse the morning I'd fled, tucked inside a drawer in Bruce's office, a voicemail notification blinking on the screen. I'd taken it without thinking. Shoved it in my bag. Listened to the message once, then never again. Because what I'd heard had confirmed my worst fear. The betrayal was real. Now, sitting on the edge of my bed with my heart hammering and Graham Voss's polite smile burned into my memory, I powered the phone on. It took 3 tries. The battery was nearly dead, the screen flickering. But the voicemail was still there. One unheard message. My finger hovered over the play button. I'd been too afraid 4 years ago. I couldn't afford to be afraid anymore. I pressed play. Static crackled. Then a voice, distorted, like it was being run through a filter, but clear enough. Payment has been confirmed. The girl will run. Downey will believe the theft narrative. You've positioned it perfectly. A pause. The sound of papers shuffling. Make sure the timeline stays clean. No one can trace this back to the family. Marla's insistent on that. Once Kernet is gone, we can move forward with the Calder arrangement without complications. Another pause. Graham, you've outdone yourself. This is exactly the kind of forward-thinking Bruce needs, even if he doesn't know it yet. The message ended. I sat frozen, the phone still pressed to my ear, my mind racing. Graham Voss. The polite, efficient advisor who'd stood in the service corridor tonight and smiled while he tried to rewrite history. The man who'd orchestrated my disappearance. The man who'd been sitting at Bruce's side for 4 years, feeding him lies, keeping him angry, making sure he never looked for me as anything other than a traitor. And Marla, Bruce's aunt. The woman who'd looked me in the eye and told me Bruce didn't want to see me. that he'd ordered my removal. It had all been a lie. A carefully constructed, perfectly executed lie. The phone slipped from my hands. Outside, a car door slammed. Voices drifted up from the street, late-night noise, nothing threatening. But I couldn't stop shaking. Because now I had proof. Hard, undeniable proof. And I had a choice. I could take this to Bruce. Play the voicemail. Watch his world crack apart when he realized the people he trusted most had been playing him like a piece on a board. Or I could run again. Take the quadruplets and disappear before Graham realized I had evidence that could destroy him. But I was done running. I picked up my phone, my real phone, and pulled up the number Bruce had forced into my contacts before he'd left the mall. My thumb hovered over the call button. Then I heard it. A sound. Faint. Wrong. Footsteps in the hallway outside my apartment. Slow. Deliberate. Stopping right outside my door. I hadn't buzzed anyone in. The door was locked. The footsteps stopped. A shadow appeared in the crack beneath the door. And I realized with cold, sinking certainty that Graham Voss already knew exactly what I had. The shadow didn't move. I stood frozen in my bedroom, the old phone still warm in my hand, my eyes locked on the sliver of darkness beneath my apartment door. Someone was out there. My mind raced through options. The fire escape, 3 floors up, no easy descent. The bathroom window too small. My phone already in my hand, but who could I call? The police? And say what? A shadow scared me? The floor creaked. Then footsteps, moving away. Retreating down the hall. I didn't breathe until I heard the stairwell door bang shut. It took me 15 minutes to move. Another 10 to check every lock, every window, every possible entry point. I dragged a chair in front of the door and sat there until my phone buzzed at 2:47 a.m. Unknown number. My thumb hovered over the ignore button. Then I saw the message preview. It's Bruce. Don't go to the mall tomorrow. I'm sending a car at 6 a.m. I typed back with shaking hands. How did you get this number? The response came immediately. Same way I found you in the first place. Be ready. I didn't sleep. The car arrived at 5:58 a.m. Black. Tinted windows. A driver who didn't speak and didn't make eye contact when I climbed into the back seat with 4 sleepy quadruplets and a diaper bag I'd packed like we were fleeing a natural disaster. Mama, where are we going? Lenz asked, his voice fuzzy with exhaustion. Somewhere safe, baby. Bush was already watching the driver with suspicious eyes. McDonald had his arms crossed, radiating stubborn distrust. Alex just leaned against me and stayed quiet, but his hand gripped mine tight enough to hurt. The car didn't take us to the mall. It took us to a building I'd only seen from a distance, sleek, modern, the kind of place that cost more per square foot than I made in a year. Bruce's corporate headquarters. We were going inside his world. Bruce met us in a private conference room on the 23rd floor. He looked like he hadn't slept either. Suit jacket gone, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened. His eyes went straight to the quadruplets, and something in his expression softened before he locked it down. Edna. He gestured to the table. Sit. We need to talk. I have the voicemail, I said instead. He went still. What? From 4 years ago. I kept the phone. I heard Graham's name. I heard Marla's. I heard. Not here. He cut me off with a sharp gesture, his gaze flicking toward the door. Not yet. First, we deal with the immediate problem. What problem? Someone followed you home last night. The blood drained from my face. My security picked them up on traffic cameras 3 blocks from your building. They waited outside for 47 minutes before they left. Edna, whoever sent that envelope 4 years ago knows you have evidence. And they're not going to let you keep it. I pulled the quadruplets closer. Then what do? We move you. Today. Somewhere secure. No. The word came out automatic, defensive. I'm not putting my children in some compound where you control everything. Would you rather put them in a morgue? The brutality of it hit like cold water. Lenz's head snapped up. Bush's eyes went wide. McDonald made a small, frightened sound. Bruce caught himself, his jaw tightening. I'm sorry, but you need to understand this isn't a game. These people don't negotiate. They don't make threats they don't follow through on. Then why haven't they already? I stopped myself, glancing at the kids. Because they don't know where you'll be, Bruce said quietly. They knew your apartment. They probably know your routine. But if we move unpredictably, if we control the terrain, we buy time to figure out who's pulling the strings. You already know who, I whispered. Graham. Your aunt. I know what a voicemail says. I need proof I can act on. His gaze held mine. But first, I need you alive to help me get it. He sent us back to the mall. It felt wrong. Dangerous. Like walking into a trap with my eyes open. But Bruce had a plan. The mall is public, he'd explained. Cameras everywhere. Witnesses. It's harder to make a move in broad daylight when everyone's watching. And right now, I need to see who's watching you. His security had already swept the entire building. Cameras. Exits. Blind spots. Parking routes. Even the daycare center where I'd sometimes left the quadruplets during long shifts. 3 employees flagged. One of Bruce's men had reported, showing him a tablet with screenshots. Never worked your section before. All started rotating near the kiosk within the last month. A woman restocking shelves she'd already restocked. A janitor who mopped the same area twice. A security guard who spent more time watching me than watching for theft. The mall had been mapped. And I'd never even noticed. By noon, I was back at the kiosk with the quadruplets playing in the small seating area nearby. Bruce's people were everywhere, dressed as shoppers, maintenance workers, food court staff. I'd counted at least 8, but Bruce had said there were more. Act normal, he'd told me. Let them think you don't know you're being watched. Normal. Right. I smiled at customers. Made coffee. Wiped down tables. And tried not to look at the strangers who lingered too long near my children. Lens was full of questions. Mama, why is that man staring at us? He's probably just people watching, baby. But he's been staring for forever. Bush tugged my sleeve. Mama, that lady over there? She was here yesterday too. Same spot. McDonald refused to let go of my apron. Every time someone got close, he'd press himself against my legs and glare like a tiny, furious guard dog. But it was Alex who noticed the pattern. Mama, he whispered, his small hand pointing toward the parking level visible through the glass atrium. That car. It was there this morning. I followed his gaze. Black sedan. Tinted windows. Parked in the same spot it had been when we'd arrived. For 6 hours. I pulled out my phone and texted Bruce. Black sedan. Parking level 2. Alex says it's been there since morning. His response was immediate. Don't react. I see it. Keep the kids close. At 2:15 p.m., Bruce's test went live. He told 3 different people 3 different plans. He told Marla he was moving me to a safe house in the Northern District tonight at 8. He'd told his head of security he was moving me to a hotel downtown at 9. He'd told Graham he was keeping me at the corporate building indefinitely, starting at 7. Whichever story leaks, Bruce had explained, tells me who's feeding information to your shadow. I'd agreed because I didn't have a better option. Now, watching the black sedan through the atrium glass, I wondered which lie was about to become a trap. At 3:30 p.m., the sedan moved. Not away. Closer. It circled the parking structure once, twice, then pulled into a spot with a direct sight line to the mall's family exit, the one I always used when I had the kids. My phone buzzed. Bruce, they're positioning. Don't leave through the family exit. Use the service corridor. East side. My people will meet you. Me? When? Bruce, now. I grabbed the quadruplets' hands, my heart hammering. Come on, babies. We're going on an adventure. But Mama, you're still working. Not anymore. Let's go. I moved fast, pulling them through the employee corridor, past storage rooms and supply closets, my pulse roaring in my ears. Behind us, I heard footsteps. Not Bruce's people. Wrong footsteps. Wrong rhythm. Mama? Bush's voice was small, scared. It's okay, baby. Keep walking. The service exit was 30 feet ahead. I could see Bruce's man waiting, his hand on the door handle. 20 feet. The footsteps behind us quickened. 10 feet. A hand grabbed my shoulder. I spun, instinct screaming, putting myself between the stranger and my children, and found myself face to face with the janitor who'd been mopping the same floor for a month. Miss Kernet. His voice was flat. Professional. You need to come with me. Let go of me. It's for your own safety. There's been a... Bruce's security materialized like ghosts. One grabbed the janitor's arm. Another positioned himself between us. A third hustled me and the quadruplets through the exit and into a waiting SUV. Doors slammed. Engine roared. We were moving. I looked back through the rear window and saw the black sedan pulling out behind us. We were being followed. Bruce's safe house wasn't a house. It was a penthouse. 32nd floor. Windows that overlooked the entire city. Security so thick I'd counted 4 checkpoints just to get into the building. The quadruplets were scared. Confused. Asking questions I couldn't answer. I held them close on the massive sectional sofa and tried to pretend everything was fine while Bruce paced the length of the living room, his phone pressed to his ear. Run the traffic cam footage, he was saying. I want to know every place that sedan stopped. He paused, listening. His expression darkened. You're sure? He hung up. Looked at me. The black sedan went straight to the Northern District, he said quietly. The safe house location I told Marla about. My stomach dropped. But Marla wasn't the leak, Bruce continued, his voice tight with something that sounded like betrayal. She doesn't have access to my security channels. She couldn't have coordinated a tail that fast. Then who? The only other person who knew we were moving you today. Bruce's jaw clenched. The only person who's been in every meeting, every debrief, every strategic call for the last 72 hours. He pulled up a message on his phone and showed it to me. From Graham Voss, sent 40 minutes ago. Confirmed safe house coordinates. Northern District. Extraction team on standby. Bruce's eyes met mine. Graham didn't just write the letter 4 years ago, he said. He's still running the play. The call came at 4:47 a.m. I'd been awake for hours, sitting in the penthouse's guest room with all 4 quadruplets piled into the king-sized bed like refugees seeking warmth. Lenz had finally stopped asking questions around midnight. Bush had watched the door until his eyes couldn't stay open. McDonald still had his hand fisted in my shirt. Alex hadn't said a word since we'd arrived. When Bruce's phone rang in the next room, I heard it through the wall. Then I heard his voice low, sharp, wrong. What? Silence. When? More silence. Longer this time. Is she? He stopped. Find her. I don't care what it takes. Find her. The call ended. Footsteps. The sound of something hitting a wall, controlled violence, like a man who wanted to break everything but couldn't afford to. I slipped out of bed carefully, tucking the blankets around the quadruplets, and found Bruce standing in the living room with his phone in a white-knuckled grip, staring out at the city like it had personally betrayed him. What happened? I asked quietly. He didn't turn around. Marco. Who's Marco? Was. His voice was flat, empty. Marco was my head of security. 15 years. Loyal. Careful. The kind of man who checked under his car every morning and never used the same route twice. My stomach dropped. Was. His house burned 2 hours ago. Bruce's reflection in the window was stone. Accelerant. Professional job. Clean enough that it'll look like faulty wiring by the time investigators finish. Is he? He got out. 2nd-degree burns, smoke inhalation, but he'll survive. Bruce finally turned, and I saw something dangerous behind his eyes. His wife didn't. The air left my lungs. She was in the bedroom when it started, Bruce continued, his voice too controlled, too quiet. Marco tried to get to her. The door was blocked, jammed from the outside. By the time he broke through, the smoke had he stopped, his jaw working. She's in ICU. They don't know if she'll wake up. I thought of the quadruplets asleep in the next room. Of how easily a door could be blocked. A fire started. A family erased. This is because of me, I whispered. No. Bruce's gaze snapped to mine. This is because someone is cleaning up. Marco knew too much. He saw the traffic cam footage. He ran the background checks on the employees tracking you. He was 3 steps away from connecting Graham to the leak. So they tried to kill him. They tried to erase him. Bruce moved to the bar cart, poured 2 fingers of whiskey, and drank it in one swallow. Make it look like an accident. Remove the witness. Tie up the loose end. Remove the witness. The phrase hit me like an echo from a nightmare I'd been trying to forget. That's what they did to me, I said slowly. Bruce looked up. For years ago, when I ran, there was a woman. Another clerk. She'd worked in the same department, seen some of the same files I had. We weren't close, but we'd talked a few times. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold. 2 days after I left the city, I saw a news report. House fire. She died. They said it was faulty wiring. Bruce set the glass down very carefully. You never mentioned this. I thought I was being paranoid. I thought my voice cracked. I thought it was a coincidence. But it wasn't, was it? No. He said it with absolute certainty. They were cleaning up everyone who might have asked questions. Everyone who might have connected you to me. Your world did this. The words came out harder than I meant them to. Your empire, your power, your people, this is what they do. They erase problems. And now my children are sleeping in the next room while someone out there is deciding whether we're the next problem to solve. Bruce flinched like I'd struck him. You think I don't know that? His control was fraying, voice rising. You think I don't see exactly what this world costs? I've spent 15 years building walls to keep the people I care about safe, and someone inside those walls has been burning it down piece by piece while I was too blind to see it. Then see it now, I shot back. Graham has been sitting next to you for years. He wrote the letter that drove me away. He fed you lies about me stealing from you. He's orchestrated every move to keep us apart and keep you controllable. And you still haven't confronted him. Because I can't. The admission came out raw. Not yet. Graham isn't just my advisor. He's embedded in every part of my operation. Legal. Financial. Security. If I move against him without proof, without a plan, he'll activate contingencies I don't even know exist. He could collapse everything. Or worse, he could disappear, and whoever he's working with will send someone I can't identify. I stared at him. So we do nothing? We do nothing, stupid. Bruce dragged a hand through his hair, exhaustion bleeding through the cracks. We're not just fighting Graham. We're fighting whoever put him in place. Whoever benefits from keeping me angry and isolated. And whoever wants those children, he gestured toward the bedroom. Alive and controllable. The Calder Syndicate. The rival family Graham's voicemail had mentioned. They want heirs, I said quietly. Bruce Downey's children, raised under their influence. A future throne they can control. Which means they won't stop. Bruce's eyes met mine. Not until they have them. Or until we're all dead. I went back to the guest room, but I couldn't sleep. Instead, I sat in the dark with the old phone in my hands and played the voicemail again. Graham's distorted voice. Calm. Professional. Pleased with himself. Payment has been confirmed. The girl will run. Downey will believe the theft narrative. You've positioned it perfectly. I'd heard it a dozen times now. But this time, I wasn't listening to the words. I was listening to the rhythm. The cadence. The slight pause before positioned. The way certain syllables landed harder than others. Make sure the timeline stays clean. I'd heard that exact phrasing yesterday. In the service corridor. We can approach this more collaboratively. No, not that. Different words. But the same feel. The same controlled, measured delivery that made terrible things sound reasonable. Graham, you've outdone yourself. The voice on the recording said it with admiration. Which meant someone higher up. Someone Graham reported to. Marla. She'd been in my apartment 4 years ago, handing me cash and a burner phone, telling me Bruce didn't want to see me, making the lie feel inevitable. She'd positioned herself as the protective family elder, the voice of reason. But she'd been the architect. I know who's running this, I said. Bruce appeared in the doorway, backlit by the living room lights. What? The voicemail. The voice that praises Graham at the end, it's older. Female. Authoritative. I looked up at him. It's Marla. His face went very still. She's the one who came to me 4 years ago, I continued. She showed me the envelope, told me you'd ordered it, convinced me running was the only way to survive. She handed me the cash. She sold the lie. Marla raised me. Bruce's voice was hollow. After my father died, she stepped in, managed the family interests, guided every major decision. She's been the one constant in my life. And she's been using you, I said. Shaping you. Keeping you isolated and angry so you'd be easier to control. Graham's her tool. He does the groundwork, feeds you the narrative, and keeps you looking in the wrong direction while she builds alliances behind your back. Bruce leaned against the doorframe like he needed the support. The Calder arrangement. She wants to marry your bloodline into theirs. Consolidate power. Probably put the quadruplets under family supervision while you're too busy running the empire to notice they're being groomed as pawns. And if you'd stayed 4 years ago, I would have been a problem. A liability. Someone who had your ear and your trust. Someone who might have noticed what she was doing. I stood, crossing to him. So she removed me. Cleanly. Quietly. Made it look like I'd betrayed you so you'd never come looking. Bruce's hands curled into fists. I'll kill her. No. I grabbed his arm. You'll do exactly what she expects if you go in angry. She's had years to prepare for the possibility you'd find out. She'll have lawyers, contingencies, leverage. You can't fight her the way you'd fight an enemy on the street. Then how? I thought of them all. The bright, fluorescent-lit atrium. The cameras. The crowds. The skylight that made everything visible. We use the one thing she can't control, I said slowly. The truth. Public. Recorded. Undeniable. Bruce's eyes narrowed. What are you suggesting? Graham thinks I'm scared. He thinks I'm hiding. That's why he's been so patient. He believes I'll either run again or make a mistake he can exploit. I pulled out my phone, pulled up the photo of the envelope I'd kept for 4 years. But what if I stop hiding? What if I bring the evidence directly to him, in the most public place possible, and make him respond? The mall. The mall, I confirmed. Cameras everywhere. Witnesses. Security footage that gets backed up to servers Graham can't touch. We stage a meeting. I confront him with the voicemail, the envelope, the timeline. We get him talking. He'll deny everything. Not if we bait him right. Not if we make him feel safe. I met Bruce's gaze. Graham's arrogant. He thinks he's untouchable because he's been 3 steps ahead for 4 years. But arrogance makes people careless. It makes them explain too much. Bruce was quiet for a long moment, his tactical mind working through angles. It's dangerous, he said finally. It's the only play we have. Marco is in the hospital. His wife is dying. We're trapped in a penthouse while they clean up witnesses and reposition for another attack. We can wait for them to come to us. I glanced toward the bedroom where my children slept. Or we can choose the battlefield. If this goes wrong, we're no worse off than we are now. My voice steadied. But if it works, we get Graham on record. We get proof Marla can't spin. And we take back control. Bruce stared at me for a long time. Then, slowly, he nodded. We'll need a script, he said. Questions designed to make him slip. Bait he can't resist. I've had 4 years to imagine this conversation, I said. I know exactly what to ask. And the quadruplets? Safe. Far away. With people Marla doesn't know exist. Bruce pulled out his phone, already strategizing. I'll have them all monitored. Multiple recording devices. Backup security positioned as civilians. If Graham brings muscle, we'll be ready. When? I asked. Tomorrow. After closing. We tell Graham you want to negotiate terms, handover of evidence in exchange for protection. Appeal to his ego. Make him think he's won. And Marla. Bruce's expression went cold. We deal with her after we have proof she can't bury. I should have felt relieved. We had a plan. A chance. But standing in the pre-dawn darkness of a borrowed penthouse with a man I'd once loved and 4 children who'd never asked to be born into a war, all I felt was the terrible, crushing weight of what came next. Bruce, I said quietly, if this doesn't work, if something happens to me, it won't. If it does, I insisted, promise me the quadruplets don't become collateral. Promise me they get a life outside of this. He looked at me, and for the first time since he'd walked into my mall, I saw fear in his eyes. I promise, he said. It was the second biggest lie either of us had told. Because we both knew, once you stepped into Bruce Downey's world, there was no outside. There was only survival. The script took 3 hours to write. We sat at the penthouse dining table surrounded by coffee cups and crumpled paper, constructing the conversation like we were defusing a bomb, one wrong word, and everything would detonate. You need to sound defeated, Bruce said, reviewing my notes. Scared. Like you're ready to give up the evidence in exchange for safety. I am scared, I said. That part won't be acting. But you can't sound too desperate. Graham will smell a trap if you make it easy. He tapped a line I'd written. Here. When you mention the envelope, don't offer it. Make him ask. Make him want it. I nodded, revising. What if he doesn't take the bait? He will. Bruce's certainty was absolute. Graham spent 4 years believing he's untouchable. The idea that you've been sitting on evidence this whole time will eat at him. He'll need to know what you have. And once he starts asking questions, you control the flow. I wrote. Let him think I'm offering a trade. Evidence for protection. Then pivot, ask why he wrote the letter. Why Marla was involved. Make it sound like I'm trying to understand, not accuse. That's good, Bruce said. Confusion buys more honesty than confrontation. And if he denies everything? Then we trigger the secondary play. Bruce pulled out his phone, showing me a message thread. I've already seeded doubt with 3 of my board members. Told them I'm investigating financial irregularities tied to Graham's oversight. If he walks out of that meeting clean, I'll have legal grounds to audit him anyway. The trap has layers. Layers. Like the lies that had buried me 4 years ago. Where will you be? I asked. Storage corridor behind your kiosk. There's a partition wall, maintenance access. I'll have a direct sight line through the gap and 3 recording devices running. He traced the layout on his phone. Security will be positioned as cleaning crew, late shift workers. Close enough to intervene, far enough to stay invisible. And if he brings people, he won't. Bruce's gaze was sharp. Graham's smart. He knows a public meeting with witnesses is the last place to make a move. He'll come alone, confident, ready to negotiate. That's when we have him. I stared at the script. At the careful questions designed to unravel 4 years of lies. Why did you write the letter? Who paid you? What did Marla promise you? Why did the children have to disappear? My hands were shaking. Edna. Bruce covered my hand with his. You don't have to do this. I can find another way. There is no other way. I pulled my hand back, not because I didn't want the comfort, but because I couldn't afford to need it. If we wait, more people get hurt. Marco's wife is dying because we didn't move fast enough. I won't let that happen to my children. Our children, something in his expression said. But he didn't correct me out loud. The call came at 11:22 a.m. Bruce's phone. The name on the screen, Marla Downey. He stared at it for 3 rings before answering. Marla. I couldn't hear her side of the conversation, but I watched Bruce's face harden with every passing second. That's not your decision to make, he said. Pause. They're my children. I'll handle it. Longer pause. His jaw tightened. I don't care what the Calders expect. The arrangement was never finalized. I went very still. The Calders. No, Bruce said. his voice dropping to something dangerous. You don't get to. He stopped, listening. We'll discuss this in person. Not over the phone. He hung up. Silence filled the penthouse like smoke. What arrangement? I asked quietly. Bruce set the phone down with deliberate care. 6 months ago, Marla proposed a strategic alliance with the Calder family. Marriage pact. Shared territorial oversight. Consolidation of resources. You said no. I said I'd consider it. His gaze cut to mine. I didn't know I had 4 children. Marla did. The implication hit like a fist. She's been planning this. The whole time. She just confirmed it. Bruce's voice was tight, controlled fury barely leashed. The Calders know about the quadruplets. Marla told them. And now they're invoking the alliance, demanding the children be raised under joint family supervision to ensure political stability. Joint supervision. I stood, rage flooding my veins. They want to take them. They want to control them. Raise them as Downey Calder heirs. Groom them for a future that benefits both families. Bruce's hands curled into fists. Marla framed it as protection. Keeping them safe from exactly the kind of threat we're facing now. She made it sound reasonable. It's kidnapping. It's politics. He looked at me, and I saw something break behind his eyes. And if I refuse, the Calders will consider it a breach. They'll move against me. Against us. They'll use the quadruplets as leverage to force compliance. I thought of Lenz's curious questions. Bush's watchful eyes. McDonald's stubborn grip. Alex's quiet observations. They were 4 years old. No. The word came out hard, absolute. I don't care what alliance you need or what war this starts. My children are not bargaining chips. Our children, Bruce said quietly. Then act like it. I moved closer, my voice low and fierce. You said you protect the people you let in. You said always. So tell Marla and the Calders and anyone else who thinks they have a claim, tell them the quadruplets are off the table. Non-negotiable. Or I take them and disappear so deep you'll never find us again. You can't run from the Calders. Watch me. We stared at each other, the threat hanging between us like a blade. Then Bruce's phone buzzed. He glanced at it. His expression went cold. It's Graham, he said. He's agreed to meet. Tonight. 8 p.m. Your kiosk. The trap was set. I spent the afternoon rehearsing. Bruce played Graham, calm, efficient, always 3 steps ahead. He pushed back on every question, deflected, tested my responses. Why would I write a letter I had no reason to send? He asked, his tone reasonable. Because someone paid you to. Prove it. The voicemail mentions your name. A payoff. Marla's involvement. Voicemails can be faked. Edited. You've had 4 years to manufacture evidence, Miss Kernet. I stumbled. Bruce caught it immediately. He'll try to flip the narrative, he said, breaking character. Make you the liar. You need to stay ahead of that. Don't defend, pivot. Ask a question he can't deflect without sounding guilty. I tried again. If I manufactured evidence, why did I wait 4 years to use it? Better. Bruce nodded. Good. Keep him reactive. Keep him explaining. We ran through it 6 more times. Each iteration tighter, sharper, more dangerous. By the time the sun set, I could recite the script in my sleep. I just hoped I wouldn't have to. At 6 p.m., Bruce's security team arrived to sweep them all. They moved like ghosts, checking sight lines, testing recording equipment, positioning themselves in janitorial uniforms and maintenance gear. To anyone watching, they were just late-shift workers prepping for the next day. To me, they were the only thing standing between my children and people who saw them as assets. The partition is clear, one of Bruce's men reported. Audio is clean. 3 cameras running, 2 visible, 1 hidden. Backup recorder in your pocket. He handed me a small device no bigger than a USB drive. I clipped it inside my jacket. Exits? Bruce asked. North corridor, service elevator, and loading dock. All covered. If Graham brings anyone, we'll see them coming. And the quadruplets? Safe house. 3 layers of security. Mrs. Diane is with them. They think it's a sleepover. A sleepover. God, I hoped that's all it ever felt like to them. Bruce walked me through the final checks, recorder positioned, questions memorized, exits clear. His hands were steady. Mine weren't. You don't have to do this alone, he said quietly. I can confront him. You can stay. He'll talk to me. I met his gaze. I'm the scared girl who ran. The liability. He'll want to tie up the loose end personally. That's when we have him. Bruce's jaw tightened, but he nodded. At 7:45 p.m., I walked into the empty mall and took my position at the kiosk. The atrium lights were too bright. The silence was too heavy. Every shadow felt like a threat. I checked my phone. One message from Bruce, in position. You're not alone. I typed back, I know. Then I waited. At 7:58 p.m., my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I opened it. The message was short. Direct. Devastating. Miss Kernet, if you want the truth about why you had to run, bring the children to the north parking structure. Level 3. 8:30 p.m. Come alone or the offer expires. You'll understand when you see what we've been protecting them from. My blood turned to ice. I read it again. Then again. Bring the children. This wasn't Graham's play. This was something else. Someone who knew where the quadruplets were. Who knew about the sleepover? Who knew everything? I forwarded the message to Bruce. His response came in seconds. Don't. It's a trap. I know, I typed back. But what if it's not? Edna. Another message arrived. Same unknown number. This time, it was a photo. Mrs. Diane. Sitting in the safe house living room. Lenz, Bush, McDonald, and Alex playing on the floor in front of her. The timestamp was 4 minutes ago. Below the photo, one line. We're already inside. 8:30, North Structure. Don't make us come to them. My hands shook so hard I nearly dropped the phone. They had my children. They'd had them the whole time. And the trap we'd set for Graham was suddenly, terrifyingly irrelevant. I had 27 minutes before the deadline. 27 minutes to get a confession from Graham Voss while my children sat in a safe house that wasn't safe, surrounded by people who'd promised protection and delivered surveillance. My phone was still in my hand, the photo of the quadruplets burning into my retinas when Bruce's message came through. Stay in position. I'm sending a team to the safe house now. Do not go to the parking structure. I typed back with shaking fingers. They're watching them. If I don't show. If you show, you're giving them exactly what they want. Trust me. Stay. Trust. For years ago, I'd trusted the wrong envelope. The wrong voice. The wrong exit. Now I was supposed to trust that Bruce could extract 4 children from armed professionals while I stood under fluorescent lights and pretended everything was fine. I looked up at the empty atrium. At the cameras Bruce's people had positioned. At the partition wall where Bruce was hidden, waiting, recording. The trap was still set. If I ran now, we'd lose the only leverage we had, proof that could destroy Graham and Marla both. But if I stayed and something happened to Lenz, Bush, McDonald, Alex. My phone buzzed. 8:02 p.m. He's here. I looked up. Graham Voss walked into the atrium like he owned it. Calm. Unhurried. Expensive coat over his suit, hands in his pockets, the faint smile of a man who believed he'd already won. He saw me standing at the kiosk and his smile widened. Miss Kernet. He stopped a respectful distance away, close enough to talk, far enough to look non-threatening. Thank you for agreeing to meet. I didn't have much choice. My voice came out steadier than I felt. You made that clear. I prefer to think of it as clarity. He glanced around the empty mall, taking in the bright lights, the visible cameras. A public space. Smart. You want witnesses. I appreciate the strategic thinking. I want protection, I said. For me and my children. Of course you do. He stepped closer, his tone gentle, almost paternal. And that's exactly what we're here to arrange. Bruce is, well, he's emotional right now. Understandably. But emotion makes people reckless. I'm here to ensure everyone's interests are protected. Everyone's interests. I forced myself to breathe, to remember the script, to play the frightened mother who just wanted this to end. I have the envelope, I said. The one from 4 years ago. The letter that told me to run. Graham's expression didn't change. I'm aware. I also have the voicemail. The recording that mentions your name. Now something flickered behind his eyes. Calculation. Miss Kernet, I'm not sure what you think you have. I know what I have. I pulled the old phone from my pocket, set it on the counter between us. Proof that you orchestrated my disappearance. That you forged Bruce's signature. That you've been lying to him for 4 years. Graham stared at the phone. Then, slowly, he smiled. May I? He gestured toward it. I slid it across the counter. He picked it up, turned it over in his hands like he was appraising a curiosity. You've held on to this for 4 years. Never used it. Never played it for Bruce. Why? I was scared. Of Bruce. Of you. The truth made it easier to sell. I didn't know who I could trust. I still don't. Then why show me now? Because I'm tired of running. I let my voice crack, just slightly. Because my children deserve better than looking over their shoulders for the rest of their lives. You said you're here to protect everyone's interests. Prove it. Tell me the truth. Why did you write that letter? Graham set the phone down carefully. You're asking the wrong question. What's the right one? Why did you need to believe the letter? He leaned against the counter, settling in like we had all the time in the world. Think about it, Miss Kernet. You were young, pregnant, in love with one of the most dangerous men in the city. If I'd simply told you to leave, would you have listened? No. Exactly. You needed a reason that felt final. Undeniable. Bruce's signature on an execution order. That was final. That made the choice easy. You manipulated me. I saved you. His tone shifted, just enough to sound sincere. Bruce's world is a minefield. His enemies were already circling. The pregnancy made you a target, you and the children. If you'd stayed, how long do you think it would have taken before someone used you as leverage? A week? A month? So you made the choice for me. I made the choice that kept you breathing. Graham's voice softened, almost kind. You think I'm the villain in this story, but I'm not. I'm the man who saw a pregnant girl about to be devoured by a world she didn't understand, and I gave her an exit. Behind the partition wall, I knew Bruce was hearing every word. I knew he was recording every calculated syllable. I just needed Graham to say the one thing that would make it undeniable. Who paid you to do it? I asked quietly. Graham hesitated. Just for a second. That's not. The voicemail mentions payment. A payoff. Who authorized it? You're oversimplifying. Who? I pressed. If you saved me, if you were protecting me, who signed off on the plan? Who told you to forge Bruce's signature and send me running? Graham's jaw tightened. Marla Downey is a woman who understands sacrifice. She's spent decades protecting this family, making choices no one else had the courage to make. When she saw the threat you represented, not because of who you were, but because of what you'd become, she asked me to handle it quietly. There it was. So Marla ordered my removal. Marla ensured your survival. Graham's voice hardened, his patience fraying. She could have had you erased. Permanently. Instead, she gave you money, a new start, and the chance to raise those children far away from a war you had no business fighting. You should be grateful. I should be grateful, I repeated slowly, that I spent 4 years believing the father of my children wanted me dead. You should be grateful you're still alive to have this conversation. The mask was slipping. The polite, reasonable advisor was giving way to something colder. More honest. And Bruce? I asked. What did you tell him? The truth. That you'd stolen funds, compromised security, and disappeared before he could confront you. I gave him an enemy he could focus on instead of a ghost he'd mourn. I kept him functional. You kept him controlled. Same thing. Graham checked his watch, casual. Miss Kernet, this has been illuminating, but we should discuss terms. You have evidence that could complicate things. I'm prepared to offer you and the children protection, real protection, not Bruce's emotional promises, in exchange for your cooperation. Cooperation. A structured arrangement. Safety. Resources. A life far away from all of this. His smile returned. All you have to do is walk away. Again. I stared at him. At the man who'd stolen for years. Who'd turned love into paranoia and safety into a cage. And if I say no? Graham's expression didn't change. Then we'll have to consider alternative solutions. The children's stability is paramount, after all. The children's stability is paramount. The exact phrase from the letter. The exact phrase from 4 years ago. He'd said it without thinking. A reflex. Proof he'd written every word. Behind the partition, Bruce would have caught it. I opened my mouth to push further. And every light in the atrium went out. Emergency backup kicked in after 3 seconds, bathing everything in dim red. An alarm started blaring. Distant. Mechanical. Graham straightened immediately, his hand moving inside his coat. Don't. Bruce's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. He stepped out from behind the partition, flanked by 2 of his security team. No weapons visible. No threatening posture. Just cold, absolute certainty. Graham froze. His gaze flicked between Bruce and me, recalculating. Bruce. He recovered quickly, his tone shifting to professional concern. I heard what you were just doing. Bruce moved closer, his eyes never leaving Graham's face. I heard you confess to forging my signature, to coordinating with Marla, to manipulating both of us for 4 years. You're misunderstanding. 3 recording devices, Bruce interrupted. All running. All backed up to secure servers you don't control. I have everything, Graham. Every word. The alarm was still blaring. Red emergency lights cast harsh shadows across Graham's face. For the first time since I'd met him, Graham Voss looked genuinely surprised. Then, slowly, he smiled. You think you've won, he said quietly. You think a recording changes anything. It's evidence. It's noise. Graham's voice hardened. You can play that recording for anyone you want. Lawyers will bury it. Marla has contingencies you can't imagine. And even if you burn us both, Bruce, even if you take us down, you're already too late. Bruce went very still. What are you talking about? Graham's smile widened. The children. You think they're safe in some secure location, surrounded by your people, waiting for this to be over. My stomach dropped. They were never the target, Bruce. They were always the prize. Graham checked his watch again. And right now, the real mastermind is already holding the future. Where are my children? I lunged forward, but Bruce's hand caught my arm. Graham looked at me with something almost like pity. Where they've always been meant to go. Where Marla promised them to the Calders 6 months ago. Where you can't follow. Bruce's phone buzzed. He glanced at it. His face went white. What? I demanded. What is it? He turned the screen toward me. Message from his security team. Safe house is empty. Mrs. Diane unconscious. Sedative, non-lethal. Children are gone. No sign of forced entry. Internal job. Below it, a photo. The living room. Toys scattered on the floor. For small jackets still hanging by the door. Empty. The alarm was still blaring. Graham was still smiling. And my children were gone. Graham was in Bruce's custody within 90 seconds. I barely registered it happening. One moment he was smiling, the next he was being escorted toward a service corridor by 2 stone-faced security guards who'd appeared from nowhere. I didn't care. All I could see was the photo. The empty living room. For small jackets. No children. Where? I grabbed Bruce's arm, my voice breaking. Where did they take them? Bruce was already moving, phone to his ear, barking orders. Lock down every exit in a 5-mile radius. Traffic cams, security footage, every goddamn camera between here and the safe house. I want vehicles tracked, faces identified. Bruce. And get Marla on the phone. Now. He pulled me toward the service corridor, his grip firm but not rough, like he was afraid I'd shatter if he held on too tight. We'll find them, he said. I have people. Your people lost them. The words came out savage. Your people were supposed to be watching. I know. His voice cracked, just for a second, before control slammed back into place. Edna, I know. But falling apart won't bring them back. We need to think. We need to. His phone rang. Unknown number. He answered on speaker. Who is this? Mr. Downey. A woman's voice. Calm. Professional. Unfamiliar. Your children are safe. Unharmed. Currently en route to a secure location where they'll receive appropriate care. My knees nearly gave out. Bruce's hand tightened on my arm, holding me upright. Where? Bruce's voice was deadly quiet. That depends on you. Ms. Downey has requested a family meeting. She's prepared to discuss terms for the children's long-term welfare. I suggest you cooperate. Marla. Bruce spit out the name like a curse. She's waiting for your call. I'd advise against delays. The line went dead. Bruce stared at the phone. Then, very carefully, he set it on the counter like it might explode. She took them, I whispered. She actually took them. She's positioning. Bruce's mind was already 3 steps ahead, tactical. She won't hurt them, they're too valuable. She'll use them to force compliance. Make me choose between the children and autonomy. Then give her what she wants. If I do that, we lose everything. The quadruplets become Calder property, raised as political assets. We'll be allowed supervised visitation while Marla and her allies shape them into the next generation of controlled heirs. I don't care about your empire. Neither do I. He looked at me, and I saw something break open behind his eyes. Not if it costs me them. But Edna, if we surrender now, we'll never get them back. Not really. We need leverage. We don't have leverage. Yes, we do. Bruce pulled up his phone, started typing. Graham's confession. The recording. Proof that Marla orchestrated your disappearance. That's conspiracy, kidnapping, fraud, enough to destroy her credibility with the Calders and fracture the alliance. You said she'd have contingencies. She does. But she doesn't know we have Graham's admission on record. She doesn't know we've already moved the evidence off-site. His gaze was hard, certain. We call her. We negotiate from strength. And we get those children back. The call connected on the second ring. Bruce. Marla's voice was warm, almost affectionate. I was hoping you'd be reasonable about this. Where are my children? Bruce's tone could have cut steel. Our children, darling. They're Downeys. That makes them family responsibility. You had them kidnapped. I had them secured. Marla's voice hardened just slightly. You've been distracted. Emotional. Making decisions based on sentiment rather than strategy. Someone had to act in the family's best interest. By stealing 4-year-olds from their home? By ensuring they're raised appropriately. Bruce, you have to understand, the moment those children's existence became public, they became targets. Liabilities. The Calders are already asking questions. Our rivals are circling. If we don't control the narrative, someone else will. So you handed them to the Calders. I negotiated a protective arrangement, Marla corrected smoothly. Joint custody. Shared resources. A united front that benefits everyone. Everyone except Edna. Ms. Kernett is welcome to be part of their lives. Supervised, of course. We'll need to ensure she doesn't undermine their education with her more common sense abilities. I'd been silent until now, listening with a rage so cold it felt like ice in my veins. Let me talk to them, I said. Marla paused. Ms. Kernett. I was hoping you'd see reason. Let me talk to my children or this conversation is over. A longer pause. Then, faintly, a voice in the background, Mama. My heart stopped. Lens. I pressed closer to the phone. Baby, are you okay? We're at a big house. There are lots of people. They gave us cookies, but they're not as good as yours. Lens, where? The phone was pulled away. Marla's voice returned. As you can hear, they're perfectly safe. Well-fed. Content. They don't need rescuing, Miss Kernet. They need stability. You can't just take them. I already have. Marla's tone shifted, businesslike. Now, here's what's going to happen. Tomorrow evening, 6 o'clock, there will be a small reception at the North Point Mall, your workplace, actually. How fitting. A public introduction. The Downey heirs, their family, a united front. You'll attend. You'll smile. You'll show the world that we're all working together for the children's benefit. And if I refuse? Then the Calders will assume you're unstable. A risk to the children's welfare. And custody arrangements will be made accordingly. Legally. Permanently. Marla's voice softened, almost kind. I'm offering you a choice, dear. Be part of their lives on our terms, or lose them entirely. Bruce's hand found mine. Squeezed. We'll be there, he said. Wonderful. 6 o'clock. Don't be late. Marla hung up. The silence that followed felt like drowning. She's going to parade them, I whispered. Like trophies. She's going to force a public declaration, Bruce corrected. Make it impossible for me to move against her without looking like I'm tearing the family apart. If I fight her in front of cameras, I'm the villain. If I comply, I'm conceding control. So, what do? Bruce was quiet for a long moment. Then, I dismantle the parts of my world that make this possible. I looked up at him. What? Marla has power because I gave it to her. Board positions. Financial oversight. Access to my operations. I built an empire and handed her the keys because I trusted her. His jaw tightened. That ends tonight. Bruce, if you move against her too fast, she'll retaliate. I know. But if I don't, she'll own those children by the end of the week. He pulled up his phone, started typing rapidly. I'm calling an emergency board meeting. Removing her from operational oversight. Freezing accounts she controls. I'll frame it as restructuring, clean, legal, irreversible. That won't get the quadruplets back. No, but it'll limit her options. Make her desperate. And desperate people make mistakes. I thought of Marla's smooth voice. Her practiced calm. She doesn't make mistakes. She made one already. Bruce showed me his phone, the recording from Graham's confession, time-stamped and backed up. She trusted Graham to stay quiet. She didn't account for arrogance. So we used the recording at the reception. Expose her in front of witnesses. No. Bruce's tone was firm. If we play that card publicly, she'll claim it's fabricated. Manipulated. We'll lose credibility, and the Calders will side with her to protect their investment. We need something she can't deny. Something that destroys her narrative before she can rebuild it. I stared at him. What could possibly? Then it hit me. Her ego, I said slowly. Bruce's eyes narrowed. Explain. She can't resist control. Public validation. She's staging this reception at my mall because she wants to show she's won, that she's taken Bruce Downey's heirs and his mistress and turned them into a perfect political asset. So she'll want to explain it. To justify it. To make sure everyone knows she orchestrated the whole thing. I felt the pieces clicking into place. If we give her a stage and an audience she can't resist, she'll talk. And if we're recording, if we have cameras and witnesses she doesn't control, we get her on record the same way we got Graham. Bruce's expression shifted, calculating. But we'd need her to admit orchestrating your disappearance. The forged letter. The manipulation. She'll admit it if she thinks it makes her look smart. Protective. The wise matriarch who saved the family from a gold digger. The mall has cameras. That she'll have her people monitor. But she won't think to look for the ones we place. Not if we make it look like her event. Her control. Bruce was quiet, thinking. Then, it's risky. If she suspects a trap, she won't. Because I'm going to give her exactly what she wants. I met his gaze. I'm going to beg. Edna, I'm going to walk into that reception, in front of her cameras and her audience, and I'm going to play the frightened mother who just wants her children back. I'll make her feel powerful. And when she's explaining why she did this, why she had to take control, why I was the problem, we'll have everything we need. Bruce stared at me. You'd let her humiliate you. Publicly. I'd let her think she's humiliating me. My voice steadied. But really, I'll be handing her the rope. That night, Bruce moved pieces I couldn't see. Board members received midnight calls. Lawyers were dispatched. Financial controls were quietly shifted. By dawn, Marla Downey's operational authority had been surgically removed from Bruce's empire. She'd know by breakfast. And she'd be furious. Which would make tomorrow's reception even more important to her. At 9:47 a.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number. But I knew who it was. The message was brief. Ms. Kernet, tomorrow's reception begins at 6 p.m. sharp. The children are eager to see you. I trust you'll dress appropriately. This is a family event, after all. We'll be introducing the Downey heirs to key allies. Your cooperation will be noted and appreciated. MD. Below it, another photo. Lenz, Bush, McDonald, and Alex. Clean clothes. Neutral expressions. Standing in front of a fireplace I didn't recognize, flanked by people in expensive suits. They looked small. Scared. Like props in someone else's narrative. I typed back, I'll be there. 3 dots appeared. Then. Good. It's time you understood the price of being a Downey. See you tomorrow. I stared at the message. The price of being a Downey. For years ago, I'd run from that price. Tomorrow, I'd walk straight into it. But this time, I wouldn't be alone. And this time, I'd be recording every word. The mall had been transformed. White tablecloths. Champagne flutes. Photographers positioned at careful intervals. The atrium glowed under the skylight like a stage built for a performance only Marla Downey understood she was directing. I arrived at 5:52 p.m. wearing a simple dress Bruce's people had delivered that morning, elegant, understated, exactly what a reformed mistress should wear to a family event. My hair was pulled back. My hands were steady. I looked defeated. That was the point. Bruce arrived separately, flanked by security, his expression carved from stone. We didn't speak. Didn't acknowledge each other beyond a brief nod. To anyone watching, we were strangers brought together by obligation. Marla's people were everywhere. I counted at least 12 camera operators, security, staff in formal uniforms managing the crowd. 50 guests milled through the atrium, all of them carefully selected. Business partners. Political allies. People who mattered in the world Marla controlled. And standing near the fountain, dressed in matching Navy outfits that made them look like tiny diplomats, were Lenz, Bush, McDonald, and Alex. My heart stopped. They saw me at the same moment. Lenz's face lit up. Bush stepped forward. McDonald broke away from the woman holding his hand and ran. Mama! I dropped to my knees and caught him, then all 4 of them, pulling them into my arms so tightly I couldn't breathe. Lenz was talking a mile a minute. Bush was silent but shaking. McDonald wouldn't let go of my neck. Alex pressed his face into my shoulder and said nothing at all. I'm here, I whispered. I'm right here, babies. I've got you. Miss Kernet. Marla's voice cut through the moment like a blade wrapped in silk. How lovely that you could join us. I looked up. Marla Downey stood 5 feet away, immaculate in a tailored suit, her silver hair perfectly styled, her smile warm and practiced. Behind her, 2 men in dark suits, Calder representatives, based on the pins on their lapels. Mrs. Downey. I forced myself to stand, keeping the quadruplets close. Thank you for taking care of them. Of course, dear. They're family. Marla's gaze swept over me, assessing. Though I must say, they were a bit confused at first. Children do need consistency. Structure. They need their mother. And they'll have you. In an appropriate capacity. Marla gestured toward the gathering crowd. Shall we begin? Our guests are eager to meet the Downey heirs. Bruce appeared at my side, his presence solid and grounding. He didn't touch me, but he looked at the quadruplets with something raw and unguarded before locking it away. Marla, he said quietly. We need to talk. After the presentation, darling. This is important. Now. The single word carried enough weight to make several nearby guests turn and stare. Marla's smile tightened. Bruce, you're being emotional again. We agreed this was best for. We didn't agree to anything. His voice stayed low, controlled, but I heard the fury beneath it. You took my children without my knowledge or consent. You staged this performance to force compliance. That ends now. You're making a scene. Good. Bruce stepped forward, and I saw Marla's security tense. Because I want witnesses when I ask you directly, did you orchestrate Edna's disappearance 4 years ago? The atrium went quiet. Cameras swiveled. Guests stopped pretending not to listen. Marla's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered behind her eyes. Bruce, this is hardly the time. Did you forge my signature on a letter threatening her life? Did you pay Graham Voss to construct a narrative that made her run? I protected this family. Did you take my children? Marla's composure cracked, just slightly. I secured them. Yes, because you were too blinded by sentiment to see the danger she represented. She was pregnant, terrified, and you made her believe I wanted her dead. I made her believe what was necessary. Marla's voice hardened, her polished veneer slipping. Bruce, you have to understand, she was a liability. A clerk with no background, no training, no understanding of what it means to be part of this world. If she'd stayed, your enemies would have used her. Used those children. I gave her a way out that kept everyone alive. You lied to me. I managed you. Marla stepped closer, her tone shifting to something almost pitying. You were in love. Reckless. Making promises you couldn't keep to a girl who had no business being in your life. Someone had to make the hard choice. So you made it for me. Someone had to. Marla glanced at the watching crowd, seemed to remember where she was, and smoothed her expression back into calm authority. And 4 years later, here we are. The children are safe. The family is intact. And Ms. Kernet can be part of their lives in a supervised, appropriate capacity. This is a good outcome, Bruce. I'd been quiet until now, letting Bruce take the lead. But I saw the opening Marla had just created, the arrogance that made her think she was still controlling the narrative. You're right, I said softly. Both Bruce and Marla turned to look at me. You made the hard choice, I continued. You saw a threat and you eliminated it. That's what family does, right? Protects itself. Marla's expression shifted, cautious. Exactly. Even if it means forging documents, paying people to lie, kidnapping children from their home. I kept my voice steady, reasonable. Because the children's stability is paramount. Marla went very still. That's what the letter said, I continued. For years ago. That exact phrase. For the children's stability, it is paramount that you remove yourself from Mr. Downey's sphere of influence immediately. You wrote that, didn't you? I don't see how. Because Graham used the same phrase yesterday. And you just used a variation of it 30 seconds ago. It's your logic. Your language. I pulled out my phone, held it up. And it's on the voicemail from 4 years ago. The one where someone, a woman with authority, tells Graham he's done well. That the timeline stays clean. That I'll run and Bruce will stay angry. Marla's gaze flicked to the cameras. To the guests. To the Calder representatives who were watching with sharp, assessing eyes. You're making wild accusations based on a phrase. I'm stating facts based on evidence. Bruce pulled out his own phone. 3 recordings. Graham's confession yesterday. The voicemail from 4 years ago. And this conversation, which has been streaming live to my legal team for the last 6 minutes. Marla's face went white. You. Every camera in this atrium is recording, Bruce continued, his voice cold and precise. Every witness here just heard you admit to orchestrating Edna's disappearance. To managing me. To taking my children without consent. That's conspiracy. Fraud. Kidnapping. You can't. I already have. Bruce gestured, and 4 people in the crowd stepped forward, not security, but lawyers, carrying tablets and briefcases. As of 6 a.m. this morning, you've been removed from operational authority over Downey Holdings. Your board positions are dissolved. Your financial access is frozen pending investigation. The Calders have been provided with copies of every recording, one of the lawyers said smoothly, including evidence that you misrepresented your authority to negotiate on behalf of the Downey family. They're very interested in discussing breach of contract. The Calder representatives were already moving toward the exit, their expressions locked down and furious. Marla looked around at the cameras, the witnesses, the lawyers, the crowd that had gone silent with shock. Bruce, you're destroying the family. I'm protecting it, Bruce said quietly. From you. Marla Downey left the mall under the escort of her own security, her face a mask of controlled rage. She didn't go to jail, people like her rarely did. But her authority was gone. Her influence shattered. By the time the media finished circulating footage of the confrontation, her carefully built reputation had crumbled to dust. The Calders withdrew from the alliance within 48 hours. Graham Boss turned state's evidence in exchange for reduced charges. And I stood in the atrium with 4 confused, exhausted quadruplets clinging to me while Bruce dismissed the remaining guests with quiet efficiency. Later that night, in the penthouse, Bruce found me on the balcony. The quadruplets were finally asleep, truly asleep, not the restless, frightened half-sleep they'd managed the night before. Mrs. Diane sat with them, reading a book, refusing to leave until she was sure they felt safe again. You don't have to stay, Bruce said quietly. I turned. What? Here. With me. In this world. He stepped closer, his expression open in a way I'd never seen. I can set you up anywhere. New city. New name if you want it. Protection that doesn't require proximity. You and the quadruplets can have a life that's yours. No strings. No obligations. You'd just let us go? I'd give you a choice. He looked at me, and I saw the truth in his eyes. For years ago, you didn't have one. Someone made it for you. I won't do the same thing. I thought about running. About disappearing again. About building another quiet life in another bright, anonymous place. Then I thought about Len's asking questions. Bush watching everything. McDonald holding on too tight. Alex noticing patterns. They deserve to know their father. Not the empire. Not the power. Just him. What if I stayed? I asked quietly. Bruce went very still. Then we'd figure it out. Together. No cages. No scripts. Just a family. In your world. In our world. He reached for my hand, hesitant, like he wasn't sure I'd let him. I can't promise it'll be safe. But I can promise I'll fight like hell to keep it honest. I looked at our joined hands. At the city lights stretching out below us. At the skylight visible through the windows, bright and exposed and real. Okay, I said. Okay, we'll try. Together. I squeezed his hand. But the quadruplets come first. Always. Always, he agreed. 6 months later. I stood under the skylight in the mall atrium, watching Lenz explain the difference between a latte and a cappuccino to a very patient customer while Bush restocked napkins with meticulous precision. McDonald sat on a stool behind the kiosk coloring. Alex watched the crowd, quiet and observant, occasionally pointing out someone who looked interesting. Bruce arrived at 3:15, exactly when he'd said he would, carrying a bag from the toy store 2 levels up. You're spoiling them, I said. I'm making up for lost time. You saw them yesterday. And I'll see them tomorrow. He crouched down, letting McDonald climb onto his back while Alex showed him the drawing he'd been working on. Lenz launched into a story about a rude customer. Bush just leaned against Bruce's side and stayed quiet. It wasn't perfect. There were still threats. Still politics. Still moments when I wondered if staying had been the right choice. But the quadruplets had stopped asking if we were running. They'd stopped looking over their shoulders. And I'd stopped hiding. Mama, Len's called. Can we show Dad the new pastries? Dad. Not the tall man. Not Bruce. Dad. Go ahead, baby. I watched them swarm Bruce, pulling him toward the display case, chattering and laughing and safe. The skylight overhead poured down light that made everything visible. Honest. Real. For years ago, I'd believed the safest place was in the shadows. I'd been wrong. The safest place was standing in the light, telling the truth and refusing to let anyone else write your story. Under the skylight, surrounded by the life I'd built and the family I'd fought for, I finally stopped running. And I realized I'd been free all along. I just had to choose to see it. You made it to the end. If this story grabbed you, if you felt Edna's fear and Bruce's choice and the quadruplets' hope, subscribe. Because some stories don't let you go. They follow you. And the best ones? They remind you that the truth, messy and bright and terrifying as it is, will always be stronger than the lies we hide behind. Welcome to the family. Don't run from what comes next.